Marcus Hill had dreamed of quiet mornings and solitude when he bought the cozy three-bedroom home at the end of Willow Creek Lane. Nestled between tall oaks and peppered with chirping birds, the cul-de-sac looked like something from a real estate fantasy ad. It was exactly what he needed. After years of city chaos and a stressful divorce, this was his reset button. But the reset didn't even last an hour. As he stepped out of his truck, stretching his back from the 6-hour drive, a woman materialized across the street like a ghost summoned by moving boxes. Clipboard in hand, hair shellacked into place, lips pursed like she'd just bitten into something sour. She crossed the lawn briskly, her white orthopedic sneakers squeaking on the pavement. "You can't park that here," she said flatly, pointing at his vintage Ford truck. "Oversized vehicles violate our curb ordinance." Marcus blinked. Good morning to you too?" The woman didn't laugh. She squinted at him like a prison guard sizing up a new inmate. "This is a private community with strict HOA regulations. I'm Karen, HOA president." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Funny. My realtor said this house wasn't part of an HOA." Karen scoffed. "That's incorrect. All homes in this subdivision fall under HOA jurisdiction. We've had issues with inaccurate listings before. You'll need to submit your mailbox design for approval and remove those solar lights immediately." Marcus leaned back against his tailgate and crossed his arms. "So, no welcome pie then?" Karen's eyes narrowed. "We take appearances very seriously here, Mr. Hill. Your front lawn is the first thing people see. That rust bucket is bringing down our property values." Marcus glanced at his truck, a well-maintained 1972 Ford F-100, painted deep forest, green with new white-wall tires. "That rust bucket is worth more than your Lexus." Karen didn't respond. She just scribbled something down on her clipboard and turned without another word. As she walked away, she muttered, "Let this be your first warning." Marcus watched her go, unsettled. He wasn't the kind to ruffle feathers. But this lady came at him like a bureaucratic pit bull. And more importantly, what HOA? He remembered the paperwork clearly. No dues, no restrictions, no HOA mentioned in the disclosures. That was part of why he bought the place. He shrugged it off for the moment, eager to start unpacking. Maybe she was just one of those self-appointed neighborhood watchdogs with too much time on her hands. Nothing to worry about. But later that evening, as Marcus pulled his last suitcase from the trunk, he noticed Karen standing at her window with the lights off, watching. It wasn't subtle. She didn't move when he looked at her. Just stared like she was studying a threat. He stared back. The next morning, he found a yellow note folded under his windshield wiper. Typed. Anonymous. Compliance is not optional. No signature. No seal. Just a threat pretending to be protocol. Marcus felt something tighten in his gut. He hadn't even spent one full night in his new house, and already the neighborhood was humming with something wrong. Not just strange, off. He pocketed the note, turned, and looked up at Karen's window, still watching, still not blinking. Marcus had lived in big cities long enough to know what real trouble looked like. Sirens in the dead of night, cops kicking. Indoors, neighbors screaming. So when a black and white cruiser pulled up to his curb with lights flashing at 7:42 a.m. sharp, he nearly dropped his coffee. 2 uniformed officers stepped out, calm but wary. "Mr. Marcus Hill?" the taller one asked, approaching with a clipboard. Marcus set down his mug. "Yeah, that's me. What's going on?" "We received a report of unauthorized tampering with municipal water lines." Marcus blinked. "What?" The second officer gestured toward the side of Marcus's house, where a half-installed sprinkler head poked out of the lawn. "Said you were messing with city infrastructure." "You've got to be kidding me," Marcus muttered, walking them over. "I'm installing a basic irrigation system. Bought the parts at Home Depot. It's literally attached to my hose. Bib. No digging. No tapping into anything underground." The taller officer crouched, examined it, then stood back up with a shrug. Yeah, this isn't city property. You're fine, sir. Sorry for the disturbance. As they turned to leave, Marcus caught movement from across the street. There she was again, Karen, standing at the edge of her driveway, arms folded, robe pristine, eyes locked on him like a hawk circling roadkill. Her expression was pure satisfaction, like she'd already won a game Marcus hadn't even known he was playing. "Let me guess," Marcus called out across the street. "You reported me?" Karen didn't answer. She just turned and walked back inside. The cop glanced over his shoulder. "You got history with her or something?" "Apparently, I moved in," Marcus muttered. Once the officers left, Marcus stood there for a moment, trying to steady the rising heat in his chest. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was war. But why? That night, he decided to knock on a few doors and test the waters with other neighbors. Maybe Karen was just the neighborhood crank in everyone, and knew it. Maybe they'd laugh it off and offer a drink. The first house, 3 doors down, belonged to a middle-aged couple, Todd and Dana. They answered the door together, nervous smiles on their faces. "Oh," Todd said when Marcus mentioned Karen. "She keeps an eye on things, very involved." "Do you guys know anything about this HOA?" Marcus asked. "She's threatening me with rules and citations, but I was told she has..." "Documentation," Dana interrupted quickly, eyes darting toward the street. "It's all very complicated," Marcus squinted. "But you've seen the actual HOA paperwork, contracts, legal docs?" Silence. Todd gave an awkward laugh. "Well, we just sort of pay the dues and follow the rules. It's easier. Easier." That word stuck in Marcus's mind as he left their porch. Everyone was afraid. Karen had them all trained like dogs flinching at the rattle of a leash. That night, he pulled out his paperwork again, his deed, the sale agreement, closing documents. He combed through every line like a lawyer prepping for court. Still nothing. Not a single mention of an HOA, not even in the fine print. But the next morning, a folded note appeared taped to his front door. Again, typed. Again, unsigned. "You were warned. Water violations are serious. Do not test this neighborhood's patience." This time, Marcus didn't feel fear. He felt adrenaline. This wasn't over lawn decor or sprinklers. Karen was trying to control something she no longer had a right to. And Marcus wasn't about to roll over and make it easy. He didn't know what Karen's game was yet, but he was ready to start playing. Marcus didn't sleep that night. The second anonymous warning, so coldly typed and delivered in silence, clung to him like a film he couldn't wash off. It wasn't the words. It was the certainty behind them. Karen wasn't guessing. She believed she had the power to control him. The neighborhood believed it too. He stood in the middle of his living room at 2 a.m., surrounded by unopened boxes, trying to piece it together. There had to be a mistake. Maybe some sort of old covenant, still technically applied to the area, one of those ancient property restrictions buried in county records. Or maybe this whole HOA thing was a bluff. By mid-morning, he had a plan. Marcus called his real estate agent. "Hey, it's Marcus Hill. Quick question. You told me there was no HOA on Willow Creek, right?" "That's right," she replied without hesitation. That house was one of the few in the subdivision that opted out when the HOA formed back in the early 2000s. "I double-checked before we closed. You're in the clear." "You're sure? Like, legally?" 100%. "Your property title doesn't carry any HOA covenants, not even shared maintenance agreements." That should have been comforting, but it only made what came next more surreal. When Marcus stepped outside to take a breath, he found a glossy manila envelope tucked under his doormat. No postage, no name. Just the words, HOA compliance packet. Inside were 12 printed pages, some containing vague rules about fence height, landscaping, decorative consistency, even holiday lighting. One sheet, boldly titled Violation Notices, listed his address at the top and cited non-standard mailbox, unregistered vehicle on property, unauthorized irrigation work, failure to respond to initial HOA correspondence. Each violation carried a fine, $50, $100, $75, $200. At the bottom, in red ink, was a handwritten note. You are now in arrears. Total owed, $425. Payment due within 10 business days. Further non-compliance will result in enforcement action. Enforcement action? Marcus burst out laughing. It was so absurd it almost felt like a prank, until he looked across the street. Karen was in her yard, trimming hedges that didn't need trimming. Her shears clicked rhythmically, but her eyes never left him. She had the posture of someone waiting for applause. Marcus held up the envelope. You dropped this. She didn't answer, just smiled like a shark. He walked back inside and laid the documents out on his kitchen table. There were no signatures, no legal stamps, not even a phone number for the supposed HOA office. Just a P.O. box address and the name Willow Creek Community Preservation Committee. Committee? That wasn't a legally recognized term. That night, something shifted in Marcus. The fear that had trailed him for days finally gave way to suspicion, a healthy, fire-lit suspicion that started digging in like claws. He opened his laptop and began his own investigation. An hour later, he was deep in county records, zoning maps, and archived HOA filings. One search led to another. Google Earth, snapshots, public meeting minutes, homeowners' comments in forgotten forums. And then, buried in a 2019 PDF on the county clerk's website, he found it. Dissolution of Willow Creek HOA approved unanimously. Reason: mismanagement of funds, failure to renew charter, non-compliance with state regulations. Marcus blinked. The date was over 5 years ago. The HOA no longer existed, which meant Karen. She was enforcing the ghost of a dead regime, the fines, the threats, the midnight notes. It was all make-believe. But the part that chilled him most wasn't that Karen was pretending, it was that everyone else was still obeying. Marcus couldn't unsee that one line from the county document, dissolution of Willow. Creek HOA approved unanimously. It echoed in his mind like a taunt. Karen wasn't just a busybody. She was playing dictator with no kingdom. But if the HOA was legally dead, why were people still afraid of her? There was only one way to find out: follow her lead and catch her in the act. The next morning, Marcus drove into town and bought a set of motion-activated cameras. He installed one above his garage, one near the side fence, and a hidden one tucked under the eaves looking down at his walkway. All of them funneled into an app on his phone. It wasn't paranoia anymore. It was defense. 2 nights later, the cameras paid off. At exactly 2:14 a.m., a figure appeared on the side of Marcus's property, silent, gloved, no flashlight. The figure walked slowly up to his front steps and began snapping pictures with a small handheld camera, porch light bulbs, house numbers, the color of his welcome mat. Every detail. Marcus froze as he watched the live feed. The intruder stepped into the open, face briefly lit by the reflection of her camera. Karen. She moved like she had every right to be there, like she was checking inventory. After 5 minutes of inspection, she disappeared into the darkness without a trace. Marcus couldn't believe it. She wasn't filing complaints from afar. She was trespassing. This wasn't about neighborhood order anymore. This was obsession. The next morning, he woke up to another envelope, taped neatly to his door, as if she hadn't been caught prowling his lawn just hours earlier. Final warning: lighting fixtures out of code, unapproved house number font, last chance to pay fine. Before formal escalation, no signature. Just that same typed madness on pristine white paper. Marcus stared at the envelope, pulse pounding. She wasn't bluffing anymore. She believed this fantasy so deeply that she was acting on it, enforcing it. And worse, the neighborhood still played along as if reality had given up fighting her. He pulled up the camera footage again, exported the clip, and sent it to a USB stick. Then, just for fun, he drafted his own letter and walked it across the street. He left it wedged in Karen's mailbox like a calling card. Dear HOA President Karen, unfortunately, your nightly photo shoot violated Penal Code 602, criminal trespass. I suggest you smile next time. You're on camera, not a member. Back at his house, Marcus sipped his coffee and waited. The silence was thick. No door slams, no shouts. Just the occasional bark of a dog and the rustle of wind through the oaks. But at 3 p.m. sharp, the cops came back. Again, this time for a report of harassment and intimidation of a community official. The irony nearly made Marcus laugh. I didn't step on her property, didn't speak to her, just left a letter. Want to see my security footage of her trespassing on mine? The younger officer raised an eyebrow. You've got that footage? Marcus handed over the USB stick. High definition, night vision, time-stamped. The officers exchanged looks. One of them pocketed the drive. We'll take this into evidence. If what you say checks out, you may not have to deal with her much longer. As the cruiser pulled away from Karen's house empty-handed, Marcus stood in the driveway and stared across the street. For the first time, her curtains were closed. No watching, no glaring, just silence. But he knew that silence wouldn't last, because when tyrants feel the walls closing in, they don't surrender. They strike. The officers hadn't returned to question Marcus again, but that didn't mean Karen was finished. She was just quiet, and that made her more dangerous. 2 days passed without a note, a warning, or a passive-aggressive violation sheet. No early morning, sprinkler cops, no calls about house numbers or light fixtures. Her house sat like a dormant volcano across the street, blinds drawn, car unmoved. But Marcus could feel her watching. Then, on the third morning, a thick white binder appeared on his doorstep. It was wrapped in plastic, the words, Willow Creek Community Preservation Committee Handbook, printed in large, bold font across the front. Marcus carried it inside like a biohazard. He cracked it open. Inside were over 200 pages of regulations. Diagrams, black and white photos of houses, lawn charts, handwritten violation tallies, and a long membership ledger in the back. Names, addresses, and offenses. His name was there. But the deeper he flipped, the weirder it got. Some of the names had been crossed out in red ink. A few had multiple violations stacked next to them. Overgrown hedges, mismatched paint, unauthorized garden gnomes, then a single word beside the list, vacated. One address had a note beside it. Refused to comply. Moved within 90 days. Another. Filed formal protest. Escalation successful. Marcus shivered. These weren't official notes. This was obsession cataloged. Fantasy rules tracked like state secrets. Something clicked. He remembered Todd and Dana down the street, the couple too nervous to speak up. He'd assumed they were afraid of confrontation, but maybe they'd seen something. Maybe they'd tried to fight back before, and maybe they lost. That afternoon, Marcus paid them a visit. Todd answered the door, face pale, eyes tired. Oh, Marcus, everything okay? I need 5 minutes, Marcus said quietly. Not about gossip, about the HOA. Todd hesitated, then stepped aside. They sat in the kitchen while Dana lingered in the hallway, eavesdropping. Marcus pulled out his phone and played the camera footage of Karen snooping in his yard. Todd stared in silence. When the clip ended, he leaned back in his chair like someone had just lifted a boulder off his chest. We knew, he whispered. Marcus leaned forward. Knew what? that the HOA was dead. It dissolved years ago. Karen tried to revive it, but nobody signed up. There was no interest, so she just kept acting like it still existed. Dana stepped into the room, arms folded. She said we were on the board, said if we didn't enforce the rules with her, she'd fine us. Marcus frowned. But that's not legal. She doesn't care what's legal, Dana said bitterly. She cares what she can get away with. She posted our names in one of her newsletters, Todd added. Printed fake violation reports. Made us look like we were collaborating with her. And if we denied it, she said we'd be removed from the committee. Marcus blinked. The committee that doesn't exist. Todd nodded. Exactly. She's running an HOA with one member, herself, but everyone's too tired or scared to fight her. She's loud, persuasive, looks official. That's enough for most people. Marcus clenched his jaw. Not for me. He left their house more certain than ever. Karen's rule was built on silence, on paperwork, threats, and the illusion of structure. She didn't need signatures, just fear. But Marcus had the law, the footage, the records, and now witnesses. She wanted war? Fine. But this time it wouldn't be over grass height or mailbox styles. This time it would be over everything. By the next morning, Marcus had a plan. It wasn't enough to ignore Karen. That's what the others had done, waited for her fury. To pass like a storm. But storms don't stop when they're fed by fear. He was going to dismantle her imaginary empire, piece by piece. He started with a call to the county clerk's office, requesting certified copies of the 2019 HOA dissolution. Records. The woman on the phone sounded surprised anyone even cared. Willow Creek? Yeah, that HOA's been dead for years. Paperwork's clean. There's no active charter, no president, no board, no legal authority to enforce anything. Can I get that in writing? Marcus asked. Sure. You want it notarized? Absolutely. Next, he filed a formal complaint with the police, this time with actual evidence, trespassing footage, forged violation letters, the surveillance binder, and the name of at least 2 neighbors willing to testify. The young officer from HOA before Hernandez met him at the station. She really gave you this? He asked, flipping through the thick binder. This is... Wow. She's assigning violation points to gnome statues? Marcus nodded. And she's creating a public image that she's part of a governing body. People are afraid of her because she makes herself look legal. Officer Hernandez sighed. We've had complaints from the neighborhood before, but nothing that stuck. People don't press charges. They just move out. Well, I'm pressing, Marcus said firmly. She's harassed me, entered my property without permission, and impersonated a government body. That binder reads like a manifesto. That night, Marcus printed 25 copies of a flyer. It was clean, legal, and devastating. Important notice for Willow Creek residents. The Willow Creek HOA was legally dissolved in 2019. No one has the authority to issue fines, enforce rules, or claim HOA leadership. Any attempts to collect money under the name of an HOA are fraudulent. Documents confirming this are available upon request. Marcus Hill, 304 Willow Creek. P.S. Surveillance footage is being shared with law enforcement. He posted one on every community mailbox and left extras in plastic sleeves near the park bulletin board. By morning, the neighborhood was buzzing. People were talking again. Quiet conversations near hedges, groups on the sidewalk. Even the dog walkers, usually silent and wary, stopped to grab the flyers and whisper. At 9:13 a.m., Karen's door opened. She stepped out in her perfectly ironed pastel cardigan and spotted the flyer duct taped to her mailbox. Her face darkened. She tore it down. Then she crossed the street to Marcus's house and rang the bell like she was setting off an alarm. Marcus opened it with a calm smile. She didn't wait. You have no authority to distribute slanderous material in this neighborhood. Marcus held up a stapled packet. The notarized dissolution record, and a printed photo of her sneaking onto his lawn. But I have documentation. You have delusions. Karen's mouth twitched. I'll have you cited. For what? Marcus stepped forward. Trespass? False. Impersonation? Fraudulent demands for payment? Karen went pale. Across the street, Todd and Dana stood on their porch, watching. Another neighbor peeked through her blinds. A car slowed near the curb. Marcus could feel the shift. The whole neighborhood was waiting to see who blinked first. Karen opened her mouth again, but nothing came out. She turned without a word and walked back across the street, her shoes crunching hard on the driveway. She didn't slam her door. She locked it. Marcus stood there a moment longer, then exhaled. The Queen had retreated, but she wasn't done yet, not completely. Karen's silence didn't last long. By Tuesday morning, something was off. Marcus stepped onto his porch to grab the paper and froze. His trash can, normally at the side of the house, was now sitting square in the middle of his front lawn. His mailbox flag was snapped off. Someone had taken red spray paint and scrawled the word liar on the driveway in jagged letters. It wasn't subtle. It was a message. One last desperate swing. But Marcus didn't react. He calmly walked back. Inside, pulled out his phone and opened the camera feed. There it was. 37 a.m. Karen, in a bathrobe and gloves, crouched like a burglar. She dragged the trash can onto his lawn, snapped the flag, and shook a paint can until it rattled like a threat. She looked up at the camera once, dead on, and smiled. She wanted to be seen. Marcus shook his head slowly. You just blew your last move. By noon, Officer Hernandez was back, this time with a second officer and a printed report. They took statements, photos, and secured the security footage. This pushes it into vandalism and harassment territory, Hernandez said. Not just nuisance stuff anymore. And the DA's office is already looking into the fake HOA documents. Marcus nodded. How long before something sticks? Hernandez looked grim. Soon. She's crossed too many lines now. But that wasn't the only thing breaking. Word had gotten out. The flyers Marcus had posted weren't just gossip fodder anymore. They were proof. Proof that for years, Karen had lied to her neighbors, bullied them with fake authority, and taken money under false pretenses. On Wednesday morning, someone spray-chalked HOA AOX across the community park sidewalk. By Thursday, 4 more neighbors had come to Marcus's door. One even brought a stack of fake fine notices Karen had delivered over the years. All signed the Willow Creek HOA Committee, stamped with an obviously homemade logo. One woman, Mrs. Epstein, trembling with anger, showed Marcus a $200 lawn uniformity fee check she'd written 2 years ago. She said if I didn't pay, I'd be reported to zoning. By Friday, a group of neighbors, 8 strong, met on Marcus's front lawn. Chairs, iced tea, laptops. It was the first open gathering in Willow Creek in years. Not a book club, not a barbecue, a revolt. They organized evidence, drafted complaints, and contacted a local news station. Channel 6 agreed to come by the following week. One neighbor even found Karen's old HOA newsletters on a private Facebook group she'd created, rife with false legal threats, made-up bylaws, and even a disciplinary tier system that included public shaming. She made me repaint my shutters twice, one man muttered. Said burgundy was banned. She gave me a violation number. I actually thought it was real. Marcus looked around at the group. She didn't control the neighborhood. She controlled the fear. And we gave it to her, Dana said. Not anymore. That night, Karen's house stayed dark. No porch light, no curtain movement, no committee notices taped to mailboxes. Just a pale, silent square of house across the street from a community waking up from a long, controlled dream. But as Marcus headed in for the night, something caught his eye. A car, parked across the street. Lights off, no movement. He watched it for several minutes. Then slowly, the driver's side window rolled down. Just a crack. A camera lens peeked out and clicked. Karen wasn't done yet. She'd just gone underground. The night stretched thick over Willow Creek, but Marcus didn't sleep. The car parked across the street was a silent reminder. Karen's game was far from over. He double-checked his security cameras, adjusted motion sensors, and called Officer Hernandez to request extra patrols for the next few nights. But Marcus also had a secret weapon, a group of neighbors now united and determined to end Karen's reign once and for all. The next morning, Marcus gathered the community, leaders in his living room. The air was charged with nervous energy. "Here's the plan," Marcus said, holding up a folder thick with evidence. "We file a class action complaint against Karen for harassment, trespassing, vandalism, and fraud. We also bring this to the city council and the local media." Dana nodded, eyes bright. "We finally expose the whole scam," Todd added. "But what if she fights back harder?" "This could get ugly," Marcus smiled grimly. "That's why we're prepared. Cameras, police support, community solidarity. She won't have the power of fear anymore." Over the next week, the neighborhood transformed. Flyers turned into petitions. Petitions turned into official complaints, and the local news station aired an exposé titled "The HOA That Never Was, Willow Creek's Hidden Tyrant." Karen's face flashed on screens across town, her fake authority unraveled for all to see. But the real shock came the day Karen finally showed up at Marcus's door. She was different, older, wearier. The fire in her eyes replaced by something colder, resigned. "I never wanted this," she whispered. "I just wanted order." Marcus looked her in the eye. "Order built on lies isn't order. It's control." Karen's shoulders slumped. "I lost everything when the HOA dissolved. The only way to feel powerful again was to create this illusion." "Power that hurt your neighbors," Marcus said softly. Karen nodded, tears welling. "I'm sorry." Before the police arrived, to escort her for the formal charges, she handed Marcus a small envelope. Inside, a stack of canceled checks totaling thousands of dollars, money she had taken from neighbors for fake fines. Final twist, proof that the scam had real victims, but also a key to restitution. As Karen was led away, the neighborhood breathed collectively for the first time in years. They had faced the tyrant, uncovered the truth, and reclaimed their community. Weeks later, Marcus stood in the freshly mowed park, watching kids play where suspicion once lingered. The Willow Creek HOA was gone for good, but something stronger had taken its place: trust.